You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Thursday evening, and it's time for The Voice of Reason with Michael Murphy. I appreciate the fact that you've joined us today, or whenever it is you're listening to this. Of course, you can go back and listen to any of these at any time. They're in the podcast section on lanterns.buzz or on the lanterns at Spreaker.com. So I hope that you do take advantage of this whenever you get a chance. It's another hot day here. Last week I got to get back out on the porch and it was really nice and pleasant, but today it's about 149 degrees outside, or not quite, but it feels like it. So we're back inside and we're going to stay around a little air conditioning and have some iced tea, and we're going to kind of keep it going here. We have a lot on our minds today. Of course, this was the week we celebrated Independence Day. I did a video that I put out on the 4th. I hope you'll go to. Well, you can find it on Facebook. You can find it on my YouTube channel, The Voice of Reason. I hope you'll go and check on that and subscribe to that. I try to do a couple of videos a week. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less, and it just kind of depends on the time that I have to get things done. But I appreciate it if you take a look at those. I kind of have fun doing them and try to be a little bit entertaining as well as educational, which is typically what I try to do anyway. Yeah, it was Independence Day, and that's always I don't know, a lot of people, really celebrate Independence Day really big. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later on, but to me it's kind of a somber day. While we have a lot to celebrate, there was an awful lot put at risk. There was an awful lot sacrificed. And I don't see a lot of appreciation for it. And that disturbs me. And so on days like Veterans Day and Constitution Day, Independence Day, days like that, I have a tendency to start reflecting, and I don't think depressed is the right word. I just get a little upset and a little emotional, a little angry maybe. And I don't know, the people that are close to me kind of understand that. Other people maybe see me and they think, yeah, gee, what's wrong with him? He needs to lighten up. But I think people are too light most of the time. So maybe that's just me. Maybe more people should be like me, or maybe there shouldn't be anybody like me. That way we at least don't have the disagreement, right? Oh, well. So this week we've been hearing about Blackmail by CNN. And my daughter's actually visiting right now, and three of our grandsons are here, and I had to go run some errands yesterday, and the oldest one went with me, and he asked me, he says, well, what about this blackmail thing with this deal in CNN? What's that about? And I'm glad, because he's just 13, and I'm glad he's paying attention. We tend to use words rather loosely, and I tried to explain to him. I said, traditionally, blackmail is something where there's information that you don't want out, and so if you'll pay me, I won't let the information out. And it could be criminal activity. It could be, about, a husband and wife fooling around or whatever. Maybe somebody stole something at work or whatever like that, and so somebody knows about it. Say, well, you know what? If you'll slip a little something to me, I won't talk about it. Well, of course, that's blackmail. Of course, what happened here, it's kind of funny in an ironic sort of way that CNN is getting up on their high horse about this. They would be the first to say that people have, at least that they have the right to freedom of speech and expression and all that from the First Amendment. Yet they don't seem to want this person to have the same thing. It's an interesting thing. I just saw the little GIF video today for the first time. I hadn't even really searched it out. Honestly, I didn't care. I had a show on, and they just happened to mention it, and they played it. It's comical, it's childish, and I'll let it go at that. And for the most part, where does all the problem come from in these deals? It's when somebody makes a big deal about it. CNN has blown this all up out of proportion, and now probably a lot more people have seen it, and the lines have been drawn in the sand just like they always are. People need to kind of lighten up and let things go. You know what I mean? And I'm just going to leave it at that. I can imagine each one of us has probably said or done something online that if somebody got offended about it, they'd come to me and say, you know what, I'm going to go public with who you are. And that's a very real threat, because this person, I've heard different, I can't even, I heard different people say that one person said it's a child, I say a child, like a teenager, and others said it's a middle-aged man. I don't know. Like I said, it's not that important to me. It's more the actual what's going on. They indicated like, well, okay, you apologize, but if you do this again, or if you get that back out there, we're going to tell everybody who it is. And of course, you know what happens now in this day and age, when you release somebody's name and address and phone number, they just get dumped on unmercifully. In 99.9% of the time, it's absolutely unjustified. There's no call for it. But we just have a society today that just seems that it's okay just to make somebody's life a living hell just because they said something you don't like. And I've written about this. I've talked about this in the past. We've got to lighten up, and we've got to learn that sometimes when people say and do things, okay, it was a stupid thing to say or a stupid thing to do. Let's move on. Okay? I'm tired of it. Enough on that. There's a couple, 3 things I wanted to kind of talk about before I went. I'm going to spend most of the show talking about Independence Day and related things. And so I just wanted to talk about a few things that were in the news that kind of jumped out at me, so to speak. Rabbi Lapin, I don't know if you know who Rabbi Lapin is. He's a rabbi who does a lot of work in relation to, early founding, its relationship with Scripture and things like that. And he's also very, very active in trying to get people back to the essential virtues and way of life and things like that. Maybe not way of life, is not the right way to put it, but the virtues and ideals and the way society was closer to back in the founding, because we've wandered a long ways off. And he's pretty good about this. And one thing he brought up in an article that I saw was about the fact that he says our society allows men to remain boys while women have to grow up. And I understand that, because I see these pictures of these men, quote unquote, wearing, who knows what. I mean, there are some bizarre fashions out there. There's always been that bizarre stuff, but it just seems like there's more and more. Men seem to be having an issue with the way things are going, they're encouraged to not be men, I guess is the way I would put it. He says they don't have to, they can remain boys. I would say they're encouraged not to become men. And women have to grow up. And we watch a lot of the sitcoms. I like Everybody Loves Raymond. Old show, okay. Raymond's an idiot. His wife is intelligent, okay. But that's the way things are portrayed. If you watch commercials, men are idiots. The women have all the brains. The women are the ones who are running the show, taking care of things. The guy, some way or another, stumbles into some way or another to make money and all like that. And in spite of himself, can provide for the family. The woman is the one that holds it all together and keeps everything going. In some cases, that may be true. I like to think that in my relationship, it's not that way. That it's. I've always said it's 50. It's not 50-50. It's 51-51. We each put just a little. We don't want to just put like just what we have to, and we put what we need to put in to. And my wife keeps me in line, and I appreciate that. She sometimes will look at me or say something or give me a little hand gesture or something like that. And we've been around each other enough to know that sometimes it's a little bit of a wake-up call. Our society is not really encouraging anybody to grow up. I've got a good friend, and I know I've mentioned this story in the past. In fact, I told this particular story in my book, Spare Time, when I mentioned a man. He's a few years older than my father, and he's been dead about 10 years now. But Max was a very interesting individual. He was a pilot, and so that was something we had in common. And lifelong farmer, very very intelligent man, and he was raised by a man who was very down to earth family. And there are a lot of stories I could tell you about Max because I heard them all. And his middle daughter had 3 children, and I'm very close to them, and I hear their story, have heard their stories as they grew up. The youngest one's out of college now, so I mean they are definitely grown up. But it's Max. Max was said I'm going to name him Max because he's probably not going to be very bright, and I want to give him an easy name to spell. It's not short for Maxwell or anything else like that, and he did not have a middle name. It was just Max. Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea of how he was raised. But he was raised with expectations. He was raised with the idea that he would do what he could, that he would rise to the occasion and do whatever he had to do. And I've talked about this sort of thing before, but one story that Max told me one time was, he says his dad made a deal for a truck for the farm. It was up in Chicago, and this would have been in the 30s. His dad took Max, and I honestly do not remember if Max told me. I just don't recall. I don't remember if the money had been sent in a check or if Max had a check with him, had cash with him. I just don't know. The bottom line is that was back in the days of the DC-3, and there was none of this transcon, hub-to-hub kind of stuff. These flights all took off, and they flew, like hop, skip, and jump across places. And so I think this particular flight went from Wichita to like Chanute or somewhere over there in eastern Kansas and up to Topeka, over to Kansas City, to probably Columbia, Missouri, to St. Louis, to who knows where, and eventually ended up in Chicago, and probably took all day. He probably left early in the morning and probably took all day to get up there by the time they made all these legs like that. And he picked up the truck. It was a 2-ton truck, and he drove it home. And you can say, well, a lot of guys do that. I didn't tell you how old he was. He was 14. Now we say, I would never send a 14-year-old off to do something like that. That's just not the way it's done. That was outrageous that he would do something like that. Well, you know what? He had been trained from the time he was 1 or 2 to someday when he was 14 be able to do that. We don't have expectations of our children. We don't, of course, the law says they can't drive till they're 16 or 17 or 18, and they have to have all this and that, and they have to have a certain amount of driver's ed, and they have to have this and that. And here's Max. I can guarantee you he didn't have driver's ed, and back then probably didn't even have a driver's license. He was sent up there. He had a job to do, and he went up and he did it. we have gotten to be such a society of laws and control. And what are laws and control for? Ostensibly to protect us. But what have we done? We've allowed the laws to take the place of common sense. We've allowed the laws to take the place of education. And it's just some things like that I think we need to step back. Like I said, when I wrote Spare Time, it was about this sort of thing. It was about we've got to stop, we've got to step back and take a look at some things, and we've got to go back to some of these virtues that were important back then. When I say virtues, a lot of people think, oh, virtues, we've got to be nice little pure little people and all like that. That's not what virtues are. Virtues are you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal, you do good things to other people, for other people, okay? Those are some of the essential virtues. Say nice things to somebody, compliment somebody, encourage somebody. Those are virtues. We're not talking about the fact that you're not supposed to hold hands in public or something like that, okay? I just get terribly, terribly frustrated over where we are. And most of what we complain about, we just take for granted, and we don't understand that that's what's causing the problem. We can go back and we can look at things. I saw there's a bill has been put forth. I think I saw the article yesterday. I'm not sure when it was put out. I didn't look up to see the exact bills and the dates and everything like that. But there's been a bill put forth to get rid of, take the suppressors and silencers for firearms off of the NFA and make it just an accessory. In other words, like a scope or a sight or a sling or whatever else that you would put on a gun. Because actually, there's nothing deadly about a silencer, and it's not. And I'm sorry if you've been watching movies and you think a silencer makes it where you can pull the trigger and it goes. Well, you've been watching too many movies. It makes it quieter. Okay, it does not make it quiet. It does not make it soundless. Okay. You could use the same argument talking about danger by talk about a scope on a rifle. Because with iron sights, out to 100 yards, about anybody could probably hit pretty well. Anybody that's cut any familiarity with guns anyway. And a lot of people, including myself, out 300 or 400 yards. I would shoot iron sights at something out 300 or 400 yards. Even my old eyes, I can still see fairly well. And I would do pretty well. But you know what? With a scope, I could pinpoint it. Well, a scope, to me, is probably much more dangerous than a suppressor. Now, I'm not trying to encourage anybody to go out and say, okay, well, a scope needs to be on part of the NFA and you have to have a tax and fill out paperwork to get a scope. Now, what I'm saying is it's nuts to have suppressor on there. Anyway, they have put they're putting forth that legislation. I hope it passes. We have to do something. We've got to get rid of some of these insane laws that we've allowed to be put out there like that. For what reason? To keep us safe, to protect us. Well, we need to start keeping ourselves safe and protecting ourselves. I'm going to take a little bit of a break here. I'm ranting and raving, and I don't intend to do that. But let's take a short break here, and we'll pick it up here in a little bit. Okay, and we're back. Okay, I once again thank you for joining us. This is Michael Murphy, the voice of reason, lanterns.buzz. A reminder to each of you, I want you to take the time to go to lanterns.buzz. There's sections for podcasts. There are a number of good people who, we all have our different things, so to speak, our little buttons, our little topics, our little hot points that we like to talk about. And we all have different ways of approaching things. And so I hope you'll take the time to go in there and take a look at some of these other podcasts and take a listen to them, and certainly the articles. There's a lot of good articles on there. We have a number of contributors who write an article or two a month, and then there's a number of us who write much more regular than that. I try to do a couple a week, and that in addition to the podcast. And so there's some good stuff out there, and it's not just politics. Okay, I hope you'll kind of take the time to go in there and take a look at that. And again, I'd remind you to go to Facebook and check out my page, The Voice of Reason. I got a page there where I share things daily. All my articles are placed there, as well as on Landers.buzz, and also my YouTube channel, The Voice of Reason. I hope you'll go in there and check out the videos that I've done. Don't have a whole lot of them yet, but like I said, I'm trying to do 1 or 2 a week, and I try to keep them between 1.5 to 2 minutes, and so it's not going to take a lot of your time. Go in there and take a quick look and listen to me rant or whatever it is I'm doing for the day. One more thing before we start talking about a couple things here. Baby Gard in the UK. I don't know if you've heard of this. I guess it's been ongoing for a while. The U.S. News has not picked it up. I think Matt Walsh, possibly at the Blaze, is the one who brought it to the attention over here on this side of the pond. But just briefly, he's got a genetic disease that do not allow the cells to develop to where they'll respond to the body, I think is the way I've heard it explained. And it's very, very rare. I mean, like, less than 3 dozen people have it. He's 10, 11 months old. Why it's in the news so much is because we're in a situation where this is not new, but I'm glad it's in the news. Great Britain, of course, has socialized medicine. They have single-payer medicine. So when you have a 10-month-old baby whose prognosis is not good, you have to have a group of people who analyze and look at each case, maybe not each case, but in a general sense, cases. And when cases have a certain amount of, say, hopelessness or whatever like that, what are they going to do? Well, they can't continue that, because the way I heard it described is it's the potato theory. And you go, well, the potato theory, what's that got to do with this baby? Babies aren't eating potatoes. The idea is that if you eat a potato, you also need to produce a potato. This is not a literal potato, okay? This is the idea. In other words, if I'm going to consume things in this world, I also need to be able to produce things in this world. Of course, that's where your trade comes in. In other words, if I produce an apple, I can trade my apple for a potato, okay? That's kind of what we're talking about. Yet, if you are mentally incompetent, physically unable, whether it be blind, lame, some degenerative disease, whatever like that, if you are going to eat more potatoes than you produce, well, then we shouldn't be paying to keep you around. And that's what's going on here. That's what that leads to. That's what socialized medicine, that's what single payer leads to, okay? What is even beyond this, what makes this even crazier, is, I guess 2 courts have ruled the hospital has taken the child from the parents. The parents have no say, and they want him to die with dignity. I'm sorry, I don't know how a 10-month-old dies with dignity. The bottom line is the Vatican offered to take the baby and put it in the Vatican hospital and try to work with it. The parents are aware of a doctor who actually has had some success with this disease or syndrome or whatever it is. There's a child that was given like 2 months to live, and I think he's 6 years old now. Okay, so I don't know too much about it. The bottom line is the parents have raised about $1.7 million, and they want to take the child to the United States. Now, I would think that the British government would go, well, okay, go, because we don't have to, we're not paying anything for it anymore. It's not taking money. It's not taking any more potatoes for for this baby when other people need potatoes. So that's what they're. That to me would make sense. But no, they don't want the baby going anywhere. They want the baby to die. Now that gets a little. That's a little bit too much playing God or something like that for my taste. I think it's a conversation we need to have, and I can see the side of it. I try to put myself in that position. I go, well, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Okay, there's a lot we can apply that in a lot of ways. We have to exercise restraint in a lot of ways and everything. But in looking at this specific situation, I try to think, well, if we didn't have, let's say it was 50 years ago, this child probably would have died already. We're keeping him alive artificially. So maybe we should have let nature take its course. So I think there's an argument for that. I also think there's an argument for the fact that God gives us talents and expects us to use them. And if we can, through our talents, if we can come up with ways to save lives, shouldn't we? And so I'm not here to make a decision. I'm not here to say somebody's wrong or whatever like that, except I do think this is out and out wrong, what UK is doing, what the UA courts and the hospital have done, because there's a simple solution to it. The parents want to take the child and bring it to America. They've raised a bunch of money, and there's a doctor in a hospital willing to take him and do something with him. Why not? Anyway, okay. I hope you'll kind of pay attention to that, because I think that's got repercussions, and you got to understand that as we watch these goofy Republicans continue to not repeal Obamacare, you've got to understand that we are going to end up in this situation ourselves very soon, because we are probably not going to get rid of Obamacare, or we're going to do some mishmash, rehash of it, and it's still going to fail miserably. And the fix is going to be, well, I guess we're going to have to go, I guess the government's just going to have to take it over. So we may be 30, 40 years behind UK, but I'm desperately afraid that that's where we're headed. I hope not. Understand, I really hope not, but, Okay. One more thing before we take our midpoint break. North Korea. I've mentioned North Korea a number of times. And I believe it's a very, very real problem. I think it's a very serious problem. I think a lot of people are just sort of going through their day. Like I remember when I was a kid watching Red Skelton, and I get this mental picture of him doing the Gertrude and Heathcliff going, and he was a character. I loved watching Red, and I think a lot of people are going through life like that, and they just figure, well, I just need to ignore that, and it doesn't really matter. Nothing's going to happen, whatever. North Korea launched on our Independence Day as an Independence Day gift to us. He launched an ICBM, and it was a successful launch. I believe I read that it went over 1,000 miles in altitude. And it landed, I think it was brought down intentionally. It was brought down. It was not, sent on a mission, so to speak. It was just a test to see if because when you get intercontinental ballistic missiles, what you've got here is it's not a single stage, it's a multiple stage. And so they say that they have a warhead, a nuclear warhead that they can put on it. Some of our people say, no, they doesn't. And I think some of these people saying that are just like hoping he doesn't. We don't know what they've got. Honestly, we don't really know what they've got. They've got such a tight, closed society. It's not like we can mingle with them. I mean, your average American in in North Korea kind of sticks out. He's fed his uncle, his brother. He fed an uncle to dogs and that's how he was assassinated. He has killed a half brother. The guy is pretty ruthless, so I mean, if he thinks that there's something amiss, he's just going to kill him and then ask questions later. And if it turns out they were not a spy, well, sorry about that. This is the kind of guy you're dealing with. And he sees himself, I think, in the likeness of his grandfather, who was the ruler at the time of the Korean War. And understand, the Korean War has never ended. We are operating under a ceasefire. The United States and South Korea are still at war with North Korea. Now, there are things that could be done to maybe stop this, but none of them are very acceptable. I'm not here to try to tell you what we need to do, okay? I'm here to tell you to pay attention to what's going on over there. Because you just need to be ready, because things could heat up and things could go south very fast. And when I say go south, I mean that in more ways than one. If we decide to do some sort of a surgical strike, would it be nuclear? I don't know. It might have to be. We've got nuclear bunker busters, and so it might not be a nuclear warhead that goes off above ground. It might be something that penetrates the ground and goes off. I don't know, okay? I'm here to tell you, I don't have a clue. Might we get somebody inside, through another country, working with them, maybe get somebody in there that could get to him and pull the plug on this little guy? I don't know. I think that's very unlikely as well. So we're looking at a situation where if we do anything, he may not have the capability of sending something over here, but he'll light up South Korea, and he'll light up Seoul, which is only about 35 miles from the DMZ. And that's one of the most densely populated cities in the world. Something like 15 million people in the immediate area of Seoul. It wouldn't take, if he sent 500 conventional rockets into Seoul, the death count would be astronomical. And we need to understand that. There's just some things like that we got to pay attention to. If that happens, what's that going to do to the world economy? South Korea is like the number 5 economy in the world. You don't really understand how many of our products we get that come from South Korea and primarily out of Seoul. So you need to understand there's a lot of things that are going to kind of grind to a halt if something like that happens. And it's going to put a crimp in your lifestyle at the very least, and it could get very serious at the very worst. I'm going to take a break. I forgot to look at my notes here. There's one more thing I want to talk about before I jump into the Independence Day stuff. We're going to take a break and pay some bills, and then I will be back with you here in a couple of minutes.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
And welcome back. Michael Murphy, the voice of reason, lanterns.buzz. Hope you will listen to the rest of the show, not only here, but listen to all the shows. Go to lanterns.buzz, catch some of those great podcasts over there, and a number of live shows. I would love to be able to do a live show. My schedule is such that I just have to be able to have the flexibility to do this kind of when I can, and then it gets put out at a certain time. It gets put out at 8 o'clock Eastern on Spreaker and lanterns.buzz, and then you can either listen to it as it comes out there, or you can listen to it as a podcast. And I certainly appreciate you doing that. And if you're reading my articles, I certainly appreciate that as well. One other thing I wanted to talk about is this is something that's kind of close to my heart. is the TSA. Close to my heart. They're very good. I had a heart-to-heart with a TSA agent one time. I was sitting down actually eating a sandwich, had some time to kill, waiting for a flight. I'm sitting there eating a sandwich, and there wasn't very many places to sit, and there's a TSA guy there. And I can't remember if I asked to sit with him or if he asked to sit with me, but anyway, I'm in uniform, so I'm a captain, and I'm sitting there, and we visited a little bit, and I gave him a little sense of frustration, and I thought, because I heard about a guy that did this and he got arrested. Well, since this was like over lunch and not when I was being checked out, I thought I maybe had a little more leeway. But I asked him, well, when I'm coming in, when I'm coming onto the aircraft, I said, what are you looking for? Well, we're looking for weapons and stuff like that, of course. I said, yeah, I understand that. I said, what do people do with weapons when they bring them on the airplane? And he looked at me kind of funny. I said, well, we know after 9/11 what they do with weapons. I mean, they're going to try to get to the cockpit, right? And he says, yeah. I said, don't you understand? I said, I'm already in the cockpit. I don't need a weapon. He looked at me kind of funny. He says, good point. Yeah. Anyway, the report, Minneapolis TSA fails 95% of the security check tests. That's the headline. As you read into it, it says that they, according to a Fox affiliate KQDS, they tried 18 times to put contraband through security. In other words, these are things like not real explosives, not real weapons, but things that look like weapons, knives, explosives, things like that, okay? They've got stuff that's mocked up, it's inert, whatever like that. So 17 of the 18 times it made it through. So the report says, the team said they had to stop the tests when the failure rate reached 95%, though they did not explain why. I don't know why either, but this is not unusual. This is Minneapolis, but if you'll read about these tests, most of the time, 90 to 95% of the stuff gets through. I've said this from the very beginning after 9/11. The TSA, all that stuff is for the public consumption. We're spending tens of billions of dollars so that you can look at it and say, oh, the government is trying to keep me safe. And that's what it amounts to. Because if somebody really wants to get something on the airplane, believe me, they can do it. Okay? Enough of that. I didn't mean to scare you to death. It's still pretty safe to fly. And, of course, I say that because I've retired and I drive everywhere now. No, I do take the airline from time to time. Okay, Independence Day. I took more time than I was planning on that other stuff, so I hope I get to say everything I want to say here. This week, I published an article that is it's about the men who wrote the Declaration and signed it. Not so much about what happened to them, but more in relation to the events and kind of what was going on. And I want you to read the article. There have been a lot of things done about the 56 men who signed the Declaration and what happened to them. I think it's important that you read those and that you understand what these people did. The way I approached it. It was 241 years ago that these 56 men signed a document. And what did they pledge? If we go, let's say we join, and I'm just going to pick something, Weight Watchers, I don't know. One of those, let's say we're trying to lose weight. Most of the time, people who have success in losing weight do it. Why? Because they have a support system, right? And what do? They hold each other accountable. And so when And it doesn't have to be like losing weight. If you're going to beat an addiction or something, most people don't beat an addiction by themselves. They need help. They need a support system. And they need somebody to hold them accountable. And if they feel like they're going to slip up, they've got somebody they can call, and they can say, hey, I'm having a tough time here. And they can work through it. These men, at the end of that, the last thing that the Declaration says is that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They mutually pledged it. That's something that they all did together. They all willingly did it. John Hancock famously signed the big signature so that King George could read it without his spectacles. Okay, these men they signed their death warrant, and this was no small thing. And this was not something that was done in a closet. And one of the points I make in the letter, this is not something that they just got fed up. You know, we think. I think that's why we have a problem today with the way things are, is because we just fuss and we fume and we post on Facebook and we do memes and we share stuff and everything like that, and then you're all upset because nothing changes. Well, you know, we haven't done anything to change anything. All we've done is done something to get a pat on the back from people who agree with us, or to somebody that doesn't agree with us to get mad at us and unfriend us. Starting in 1100, that's a long time ago, 1100, do the math. The Charter of Liberties. People got together and said, you know, the king has become too powerful. The king abuses us, and we need to do something about it. They didn't mind having a king. They knew they needed somebody. They knew they needed a government that could protect them. They had started off doing that. I mean, all you had was little villages sitting around, dotted around the countryside. And all of a sudden, one day, the Scandinavians came in from the north. And by the way, while my name is Murphy, you would think I'm quite Irish. I think probably about 40-something% of me is a combination of Irish and British Isles. Right behind that, some 35% is Scandinavian, and that makes sense because the Scandinavians came down from the north and they raided, they took over, they became farmers in the area, things like that, and of course I'm sure they took wives or whatever, and down the road I was born. Okay, so we end up with a long train of events. And I go through those in the article. I hope you'll read it. The name of it is "We Mutually Pledge Our Lives, Our Fortunes, and Our Sacred Honor." Well, let me back up here. I mentioned earlier that we've got a problem today with the way we do things, the way we expect things, and understand that they started in 1100 demanding their liberties from the king, and we were still doing it 670 years later. Now that's a long time, and we have to understand that this search for liberty has been ongoing ever since there's been 3 men, and one of them decided he would rule the other two. Okay, we don't like being told what to do. Nobody does. We need to figure out what these people have done for us, what they did for us. John Adams wrote a letter to Abigail, and he said, you know, I'm going to repent in heaven if these people don't appreciate what we've done. They don't understand what we've done for them. And this is a very deep thing, and I hope that you'll. And once again, this is why I go around on July 4th a little bit down in countenance, because we just do not appreciate what these men and women did. The full quote, I have it here. John Adams made a statement to his wife Abigail in a letter that he wrote in 1777. So the war was ongoing. They didn't know that at this point, he didn't even know if they were going to be successful. He says posterity, and of course posterity is your progeny, your ancestors as they go forward. You will never know how much it costs the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it. I quoted that not only in my article, but I also quoted it on my my video that I did. It was hard for me to do that video because it was very emotional for me. And it's very hard for me to consider as I watch a lot of people just really don't care. They go through their lives and all like that. You look at Independence Day. What is it? It's the 4th of July. What do we do on the 4th of July? We go to the lake. We go to the park. We go have a picnic. We go watch a parade. We watch fireworks. Maybe we bought some fireworks and we shoot fireworks off at night or whatever like that. And that's the 4th of July. The 4th of July should be Independence Day, and it should be, while it is a celebration, I view it as a celebration almost like a funeral, because when we go to a funeral, isn't that largely a celebration of the life of the person that we're burying? And so as we look at Independence Day, is it not a celebration of something that in another way is very dreadful? What these people went through, what they risked, and subsequently it was the 5 years of the Civil War. It was the years following. It was the problems they had with the Articles of Confederation that had people and states at each other's throats. It was the argument and the disagreements over whether to rework the Articles, which, by the way, did not have a provision to change. Anyway, I get in arguments with people over Article 5 about that all the time. The bottom line is that then we have subsequently to that we had the War of 1812. We had a lot of difficult times and people who risked everything. And we just don't really seem to care. And we seem to be just happy to have things the way they are. And we complain about it, but we don't do what we need to fix it. I'm going to take a short break here, and then we're going to finish off the last segment here with a little bit more talk about Independence Day. Well, welcome back. I missed that cue just a little bit, just about a half a second. Okay, just before the break, I was talking about the fact that we don't really appreciate things, and what I mean by that is we can go to the Declaration, and what did they do? They laid things out. It was a given as far as the king was concerned, and most British subjects, that the king had divine right to rule. What does divine right mean? God set it up. God wants him to be king. So if you don't want him to be your king, who are you going against? The king? No, you're going against God too. That's what they believed. Well, we need to understand that when they, I was talking with a guy earlier today about the fact. He said, well, a lot of people don't understand. He says they felt like it was Parliament they were fighting against. I said, well, that's true. I said Parliament was an issue, but you understand, the king basically told Parliament what he wanted. In most cases, they gave the king what he wanted. And when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, what did they say? Did they say Parliament? They said no. They said the king. They said he. And they talked about all the things in which he had violated their rights and violated their liberties. As I look at the world today, granted, the United States has more freedom and more liberty than most other places. However, that's a comparative thing. If we look at the United States today compared to the early 18th century, early 19th century, what are our freedoms like? There's a whole list of plants that we can't grow or we can't consume and we can't smoke. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I've never tried marijuana and I have no desire to. However, I think there's people who, if people want to, I think they should be allowed to. Okay? I especially think that God gives us lots of things. God gives us plants, all sorts of things like that have healing and other properties. And for the government to come along and say you can't grow that or you can't use that, I think is outrageous. That is the same sort of thing as what was going on to these colonists. They were having taxes put on them for no reason other than the fact that they wanted to raise some money to go fight a war somewhere. They were told, you have to buy products from this company. That sounds kind of like Obamacare, doesn't it? Didn't we fight a revolution over the thing that Obamacare is? That's one of the largest things that we fought over. We have to understand that we've gotten used to the fact that the government says you can do this and you can't do that, and so we just become subservient and we just go along with it. And I'm not saying we should go out and just, sit in the street and refuse to pay our taxes and refuse to do this, refuse to do that. What I'm saying we should do is we need to get involved. You need to not let a day go by that you don't pick up your phone and call a congressman or a senator, both at the state and the federal level. We need to be demanding that the states step up and do what they're supposed to be doing. I'm very involved in the Convention of States and the Article 5 for proposing amendments. We need to put some restraint on this federal government. I don't want to have to pick up a gun and go out and fight for those rights. I want to be able to do it, not just in the ballot box, but I want to do it sitting there at my computer writing letters. I want to do it in all those ways. And that's exactly what these men did back then. You understand, they had tried very hard for a long period of time to get reason from Parliament and from the king. And the king refused, and Parliament refused. So we have to understand that we find ourselves in that same situation. So it's time for us as a people and as states, when the federal government's not going to respond to us, it's time for us to step up and say, time out, you're not in charge, we are. And this Leviathan of the IRS and EPA that just goes forth and does whatever it wants to is just absolutely outrageous. And we need to be ready and willing to step up and back and support our people so that we can go forth and do that. And I am out of time. I'm going to have to let things go, but I certainly appreciate once again that you guys have joined me this evening, and I look forward to talking to you next week, and we'll see you online and wherever else. God bless you all.